Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The purpose of this committee and the members of the Sikh community that are associated with the committee has been to procure a public censure of Mr. Ujjal Dosanjh, to get the Liberal Party of Canada to publicly admonish him for the slanderous statements that he has been making about the members of the Canadian Sikh community generally and the members of Canadian Sikh youth in particular in the recent past. Now, needless to say that as a result of his actions, Sikhs across Canada have had to face increasing challenges pertaining to renewed racism, and the general image of the community globally and within the Canadian mainstream society has been tarnished. To date, Mr. Dosanjh has not provided any substantiation, any evidence, direct or circumstantial, for his unfounded allegations, despite being requested on numerous occasions to do so. Well, that campaign goes on. It doesn't end with our meeting here today. However, in the meantime, we as a community, with the help of this ad hoc committee, have made certain substantive advances towards our goal. And I'd like to share some of those with you now. Now, it is clear that as a result of the commitment shown by this committee, the Liberal Party of Canada has taken our complaints against Mr. Dosanjh very seriously. The committee has met the leader of the party, Mr. Ignatieff, and many of its members of parliament, apart from conducting such public meetings as this one across the country on this particular issue of Mr. Dosanjh. We've seen active participation by members of parliament from the party in an attempt to alleviate the community's concerns about its image as projected by Mr. Dosanjh's nefarious and anti-Sikh activities. However, it must be stated that the party has stopped short of a public disciplinary action against Mr. Dosanjh, although various top officials in the party leadership have distanced themselves from Mr. Dosanjh's agenda in private conversations with various members of our community. Now, as a result of this fresh elections call, as I'm sure many of you would know, that the Prime Minister would be approaching the Governor General today at some point, if he's already, if he hasn't done that already, he's done it, to dissolve the House of Parliament and to call for fresh elections. Give me a second. I think I pushed something here. And as a result of the fact that the government lost the confidence motion yesterday, fresh elections are going to be held in I think about a month's time in May. So as a result of that, some of the members of Parliament that were supposed to be attending this meeting now have not been able to do so. In particular, Mr. Bob Ray and Mr. Andrew Kanya, they were expected to be here, but what they've done is they've sent us correspondence to the committee pertaining to the issues that we're going to be discussed today. Now, Mr. Kanya has been asked to lead a Team India group within the Liberal caucus in an attempt to ensure good relations with and a healthy two-way communications with the community. Now, I must stress that this group that was supposed to be formed, I don't know if it's going to be formed now because of the elections, this was meant to address issues as they pertain or as they are related to what we know as Indian communities generally, or the South Asian community, not in particular just the Sikh community, even though this initiative apparently was undertaken as a result of this committee's many activities, lots of actions that we've undertaken over the last year and a half to address this particular issue of Mr. Dosanjh. Now, while expressing his regrets, Mr. Kanya, for not being able to attend this meeting, he says, and I quote, he says, "I have repeatedly expressed my views on television and radio that I reject any opinions that the Sikh community in Canada is extreme or dangerous. The Sikh community in Canada is one of peace and goodness, and I will continue to make those comments public. I am proud to be an advocate for your community and your friend. I will continue to stand with you and for you as long as I'm a member of Parliament." Now, I must say that Mr. Kanya emphasizes the "with you" and the "for you" part in this last sentence by putting it in capital letters. Mr. Bob Ray, while expressing a similar regret for not being able to attend this meeting, also says, and I quote, "All members of the Liberal Party salute the members of the Sikh community for their determined support for human rights and democracy in Canada, in India, and around the world. We are also impressed by the commitment of young people in this community to continue these important struggles. We shall continue to work with the community as we've always done, both federally and provincially." End quote. Now, this statement is in direct contrast with Mr. Dosanjh's recent expressions that the young people of the Canadian Sikh community are being trained in hate and violence. In an earlier communication, Mr. Rob Oliphant, another member of Parliament from the Liberal Party and a critic for multiculturalism, had said, and I quote, "Mr. Ignatieff was clear about the fact that Mr. Dosanjh's opinions on certain matters relating to the Sikh community are not those of the party or necessarily his or mine." End quote. Now, this was in reference to a meeting that this Ad Hoc Committee had with the Liberal leader, Mr. Ignatieff, sometime in the past. From the foregoing, it can be concluded that as a result of the actions of this Ad Hoc Committee, along with the support of the Canadian Sikh community, the Liberal Party of Canada has taken the matter of Mr. Dosanjh's unsubstantiated and slanderous campaign against the Sikhs of Canada rather seriously. And the party, through its various officials, has been making diplomatic overtures, distancing the party's organization from Mr. Dosanjh's actions and tacitly expressing now, mind you, tacitly, indirectly, covertly, not expressly, not directly, not in a public fashion. So it's been tacitly expressing a condemnation of his actions and his comments pertaining to the Canadian Sikhs. However, on behalf of this committee, I'd like to state that this is not enough. The humiliation suffered by the Canadian Sikh community as a result of Mr. Dosanjh's false commentary was public. This is a public matter. We were degraded publicly. We were disgraced publicly. Our image was tarnished publicly. Therefore, any concerns and solutions to this matter must also be addressed publicly. Mr. Dosanjh is a member of Parliament with the Liberal Party of Canada. Tragically, his actions reflect poorly upon the party, especially in light of the fact that his actions have not been censured or publicly condemned by the party hierarchy. To date, no formal action has been effected by the party's internal disciplinary mechanisms, and no public reprimand against his slanderous comments has been issued. In the absence of disciplinary measures by the party, Mr. Dosanjh's actions undeniably implicate the party as a whole. In passing, it must also be said, in all fairness, that the Liberal Party's leadership has expressed a desire to address broad issues of concern to the Canadian Sikh community sometime during these upcoming Vaisakhi celebrations. Now, they've I think, rather made it clear that they wouldn't necessarily zoom in on this particular issue of Mr. Dosanjh, but rather sort of address Canadian Sikhs issues generally speaking, so as to assuage some of the hurt that has been caused by Mr. Dosanjh. However, if that is the case, I would, if I may venture, would be rather inadequate. We strongly urge the party to undertake the following. Ask Mr. Ujjal Dosanjh to substantiate his comments or withdraw and apologize for all the hurtful and insulting statements that he's made about the Sikh community. The Liberal Party of Canada must publicly make its stand clear on the issue of extremism and other related issues as it sees them within the Canadian Sikh community. If the party does not agree with Mr. Dosanjh's statements, the party must clarify its position and dissociate itself from the statements. To undo the damage that Mr. Dosanjh's statements have caused in the relationship between the Canadian Sikhs and the Liberals, the Liberal Party of Canada should issue a positive statement about the Canadian Sikh community in public. In light of the statement made by the Honourable Michael Ignatieff, leader of the Liberal Party, on the petition concerning the events of November 1984 in India, it must be said that some of the observations were factually wrong and inaccurate. Historically, some of the parts of the statement were erroneous and false. That also must be addressed. Historical facts must be accurately restated. We urge the Liberal Party of Canada that the party issue a statement reflecting the accuracy of the events of the Sikh genocide as it unfolded through November 1984 at the hands of the Indian government. As I said earlier, individual members of the party have publicly and privately expressed a tacit dissociation from Mr. Dosanjh's actions. However, through this ad hoc committee, the Canadian Sikh community as a whole expects a formal statement issued by the Liberal Party's administrative wing with its leaders' inclusion and approval, directly censuring Mr. Dosanjh and repairing its relations with the Sikhs of Canada. This community will stay committed to its goal in this ongoing campaign. Thank you.
Sukh Dhaliwal, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। मनोहर सिंह बाल होना ने मीडिया की भी गल की सी, मैं ये भी आप जी नूं याद करवा दियां कि मीडिया दे विच सारे इक्को जिहे नहीं। अणखीला पंजाब के उत्ते भी टाक शो होया सी उज्जल दोसांझ के संबंध च। असी टाइम टू टाइम सुखदेव सिंह जी अज की आवाज़ तो आए हुए ने, इन्हों भी जदों फोन किया भी सानू समा चाहिए, खुला समा इन्होंने सानू दिता है। इस तरह ही अणखीला पंजाब ने भी किया। अब पिछला हफ्ता पूरा असी अपना काम छड्ड के ते मीडिया के पिछे ही घूमते रहे हैं। ये नहीं भी कली फैक्स करिए या फोन करिए, असी परसनली जाके मिल के तो स्टेटमेंट दिते सी भी आह अनाउंसमेंट जी पब्लिक की करते हो। सो बहुत सारे मीडिया ने इसकी कवरेज की है, बहुत सारे ने इस तो कन्नी भी करवाई है। आने वाले समय में जो पता लग जाएगा भी किन्हों ने कन्नी करवाई है। सो असी जिन्होंने इस विच अपना वध चढ़ के योगदान पाया उन्होंने तहे दिलों धन्यवाद करते हैं। सो हुण मैं बेनती करूँगा रमनदीप कौर नूं, वो आप जी नूं मिस्टर एंड्रू कैनिया जो ब्रैम्पटन तो MP हैं, उन्होंने वालों आई हुई जो चिट्ठी है इस मीटिंग के संबंध में आप जी के नाल साझी करनगे। समा थोड़ा है, असी 2 बजे समाप्ति करनी चाहते हाँ। कुछ एक होर मेरे पास बुलारे हैं जिन्होंने आप जी के नाल अपने विचार साझे करने हैं। रमनदीप कौर आप जी नूं एंड्रू कैनिया की लैटर जी है वो पढ़ के सुनाओगे।